Hey guys, Chloe here. For today's video, I am going to be doing a virtual reading of the first chapter of my book, Hold the Phone. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Chapter 1. It was a dark and cold morning, and I immediately knew it was too early for any normal person to get out of bed. If my annoying alarm hadn't gotten me up, the rain pouring on my window would have. I groaned, smacking my alarm and slithering out of bed and down the hall to the bathroom. I splashed water on my face and brushed my teeth, tweaking my messy bun for the early workday. After putting on some light makeup, I sighed and headed back to my room, digging through my hamper to find an apron that was somewhat clean. Tugging at the half-open drawers of my dresser, I pulled out some fresh jeans, underwear, and t-shirt to throw on. Slipping into my shoes, I completed the ensemble with the aforementioned apron and tied it around my waist. I yawned at my reflection, then grabbed my keys and rain jacket, heading out the door. I flicked the porch light on to see the slippery steps beneath me that led to my car in the driveway. "Shit," I said to myself as a gust of rainy wind slapped my face. I lightly jogged to my car and hopped in quickly, avoiding as much wetness as I could. The chariot that awaited me was my trusty dark green Honda CR-V, a solid car that was 30 years past her prime. For no special reason other than rhyming, I called her Wanda the Honda. Wanda was great and took me anywhere I needed to go. The seat cushions were stuffed with crumpled receipts and missing tubes of lip gloss. Half-empty water bottles rolled underneath when I cut corners too tight, and one of the cup holders was nearly filled to the brim with spare change. I shivered as I turned the car on, cranking the heater all the way up and blowing on my hands as I balled them together to keep them warm. My knuckles were already red. My windshield wipers were struggling to reduce the blurred vision of the road as I made my way to work. I work at a small coffee shop in the heart of downtown. It's not the best job in the world, but hey, it's money. Although it was a pain in the ass to get up so early, I did enjoy the drive to work. The whole world, well, at least the city, seemed peaceful with no one else awake yet. I pulled into the empty parking lot behind the cafe, picking up a spot close so I didn't have to walk far. I jogged again, lightly towards the back door, shortening my time in the rain. I used my key to unlock the door and stepped inside. Flipping the switch onto the cafe, I looked around at all the empty tables and imagined that in only a few short hours, they would all be filled with regulars. Around the same time, my sister Margaret would be in to help get the day going when it started getting crazy. Living and working with my sister wasn't ideal, but we made it work. Ever since our parents died, we were basically all each other had. Fights over little things like who didn't wash the dishes or whose turn was it to take the trash out didn't matter anymore when we were on our own. I turned the lights on in the kitchen and flicked on a switch for each oven we had. Every morning we baked fresh pastries in the back of the cafe. It was another reason I liked working the early shift. Baking dozens of tartlets and danishes when the shop was closed was a little thrill of mine. I plugged my phone into the stereo and turned on some music to get my endorphins going. While the ovens were heating, I walked out to the front of the house, erasing the mini chalkboard to fill in the daily special. It was Monday, which only meant one thing: Mocha Monday. A simple special that seemed to be the most popular. We could easily come up with cool new drinks for people to try, but not all were as adventurous. I checked the coffee beans in the grinder for freshness, filling it to the top with more beans. I clicked on the grinder, pulling fine espresso powder into the portafilter. I tamped and knocked the espresso, making it as even and tight as I could. Pulling the portafilter into place, I set a paper cup underneath to catch the shots. While the shots were pouring, I steamed my milk. The magical sounds of a fresh mocha being made left me feeling excited for the day. I pumped chocolate syrup into the cup, swirling it around the espresso, creating a beautiful dark caramel color. Tilting the cup at an angle, I slowly poured the hot, frothy milk into the cup, moving it in a way that left a simple stamp of espresso art on top. The first sip greeted my sleepy lips with a warm kiss of comfort and caffeine. I sighed, internalizing a small as I swallowed my first sip. The beeping of the ovens reached their intended temperature, pulling me away from my little Folgers commercial moment, and I made my way back to the kitchen. Setting my cup down on the counter, I pulled a few trays of prepped pastries from the refrigerator. After placing them in the oven and setting the timer, I began prepping pastries for the following morning. I wrapped the trays with saran wrap and placed them inside the fridge, then turned on the panini press before heading back to the front of the house. I refilled everything at the condiment bar, from napkins to stir sticks to new containers of cream. I used a clean wet rag to wipe down the counters. I paused when the rain suddenly poured down heavily. It nearly drained out the music I had on, so I didn't hear Margaret coming in the back door. The door slammed open, showing Margaret in an oversized raincoat, her dark bangs drenched from the rain. "Ugh, morning, sunshine," I said. Margaret flipped me off before I continued. "Want a mocha?" Make it a chai, and sure. You've always been my favorite sister, you know, she said. I'm your only sister. I rolled my eyes, steaming milk. I can't believe how bad this storm is, she said, staring out the window. I slid her drink to her across the counter. That downpour scared me, I agreed. Margaret took her first sip and had the same reaction as I did. I think coffee was our love language, which in hindsight makes sense since we both worked at this coffee shop. I'm not sure if we would have had a choice to work here, to be honest. The owners of the cafe, Jerry and his wife Linda, were close friends with our parents. Our jobs were basically handed to us when we struggled to make ends meet after the accident. You excited? Margaret asked. About what? I asked. First day of school tomorrow. It's always exciting, she encouraged. Is it? I asked sarcastically. Lighten up, she pushed. I shrugged. Another year of high school. Can't wait. Fair point, she agreed. Is community college any better? I asked. She stood up straight. Let's get the day going, huh? Great, I mumbled to myself as she went in the back to set her things down. The sun, from what we could see through the storm, was slowly starting to rise. Customers would be on their way in soon, making me dread that my time alone in the cafe was almost over. When's the interview today? I asked Margaret. 10 or 11, I think. I'll let you know how it goes, she said. Sounds good. I'll be back later to close. I obsessively watched the clock tick by slowly in the cafe as I waited to shut and lock the doors for the night. I was eager to get home and lock myself in my room with a bowl of mac and cheese and true crime podcasts. My eyes wandered around the room before landing on an attractive guy sitting at a small table, his nose buried in a book. Earlier on in the day, I probably would have been intrigued, but at this point, all I could think of was my bed. I approached the table quickly, clenching and unclenching my fists as my anxiety creeped in from the inevitable human interaction. Just to let you know, we're closing soon, I said. The guy looked up from his book, his eyes washing over me once. Okay, he said, simply before returning to his book. I stood there motionless, watching him as he continued reading. He looked up again. Was there something else? I shook my head. You just enjoy watching me read, huh? He asked. No, I said flatly. It's just, we're closing soon. So you said, he challenged. Are you gonna leave, or? I asked. Do you talk to all of your customers like this? He asked, putting his book down on the table. I scowled as he smirked at my annoyance. Fine, he continued. I'll go. Although you should probably know, my coffee tasted burnt. Impossible, I argued. He stood up and put his jacket on, locking eyes with me. I continued. Maybe that's what happens when you pop in right before close. Or maybe no one has told you about your poor coffee-making skills because you can't seem to handle constructive criticism, he argued. I stared at him in disbelief. That bitter attitude could use some work too, he said. I scoffed. My attitude? I mean, you did come up to my table when I was minding my own business just to tell me that you were closing soon, not even that you were closed, he said. Leave, I said. I'm not going to hold back in my Yelp review, he warned as he headed for the door. Yelp hasn't been relevant for a long time, so the joke is on you, I said, following him to the door. You seem pretty confident to talk this way to a perfectly innocent customer at your place of work, he continued. I am, because I know nothing will come of this, I said confidently. Come of what? He stopped right by the door. Whatever this is, you think one bad review would do any damage? I asked. Apparently not. I scowled as he reached for the doorknob. What's your name anyway? He asked. What's it matter? I asked, caught off guard. This was fun, he admitted. I sighed. Lainey. And you are? Just leaving. See you around, Lainey. He exited the cafe as I locked the door behind him. I watched him walk until he was completely out of sight, then headed back to the bar, grabbing a wet rag to wipe down all of the tables. Maybe I had been bitchy towards him, but I didn't really care. I think, in a weird way, I enjoyed our banter a little bit too. It was the most exciting thing that had happened all day. I could use all the distractions to forget about school tomorrow. I just wanted something different so badly, to feel alive again. I thought I had become too cynical for a teenager. I couldn't possibly be this underwhelmed for all that life had to offer. I finished the rest of my closing duties, and then grabbed my coat and keys and ran out to my car. I ended up drenched from the rain again, but it didn't matter. I was finally heading home to my tiny, safe place.